was driving home a little after midnight when I decided to pull over for a few minutes. I was sitting in my truck, drinking coffee and scrolling through my phone. Out of nowhere, a young woman slammed on my driver's side window, begging me to help her. Looking at her, I honestly thought she needed it. My name's Jeffrey. I served in the Marine Corps for several years, and if there's one thing those years taught me, it's to stay calm when everybody else is losing theirs. You learn not to jump to conclusions. You look at the facts, you read the situation, and you deal with what's in front of you. Panic usually makes things worse. During my time in the Marines, I saw things most people thankfully never have to see. Blood, bodies, violent crime, terrible accidents, you name it. None of those memories are pleasant, but every one of them had something in common. They all made sense. There was always an explanation. But what happened to me one night in Washington didn't. Even now, I still can't explain it. Honestly, I don't think I ever will. I've told bits and pieces of this story over the years, but never the whole thing, mostly because I already know how it sounds. But it happened exactly the way I'm about to tell it. Back then, I was living in Olympia, Washington. I'd been out of the Marines for a few years and was working a regular job. Life had settled into a pretty normal routine. The only thing that had really changed was after my mom passed away. My dad had been living alone ever since. He wasn't the kind of man who'd ever admit he needed company. If you asked him how he was doing, the answer was always, "I'm fine." Didn't matter if he actually was or not. So every couple of weeks, I'd drive out to see him. He lived near Aberdeen, a couple of hours from me. We'd have dinner, sit around talking about whatever happened to come up. I'd fix something around the house if it needed fixing. Then I'd head back home later that night. That night started exactly the same. I got there in the evening. We had dinner together, watched a little TV, talked about baseball for a while, and I fixed a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen before I left. Nothing unusual happened. Before I walked out the door, my dad asked if I wanted to stay the night. I smiled and told him, "Dad, I've driven this road 100 times. I'll be fine." He didn't argue. He just nodded, and a few minutes later, I was back on the road. It was a little after midnight. It was one of those typical Washington nights, cold, damp, and quiet. The roads were almost empty. Every now and then, another car would pass, but most of the drive, it was just me, my truck, and miles of forest on both sides of the highway. I smoked a lot back then, way more than I should have. By that point, I'd probably gone through almost half a pack already. Long drive, too much coffee, old habit. That was usually enough for me to keep reaching for another cigarette without even thinking about it. After a while, I started feeling tired, not sleepy, just mentally drained. You know when you've been driving for a couple of hours and your body just tells you, "All right, take 5 minutes." So that's exactly what I did. I pulled into a small gravel turnout just off the highway. It wasn't a rest stop. No lights, no buildings, just enough space to pull over for a few minutes before getting back on the road. I left the truck running, grabbed my coffee from the cup holder, and leaned back in my seat for a second. The radio was off. The heater hummed quietly through the vents. Outside, it was completely still. My headlights caught the first few rows of trees. Past that, I couldn't see anything. I picked up my phone, replied to a couple of messages. Then, like everybody else these days, I ended up scrolling through a few Instagram reels, just random stuff, a couple of funny videos, one of those clips that makes you laugh for a second and then you immediately forget about it. Next thing I knew, I'd been sitting there for a few minutes, just mindlessly scrolling. I took another sip of coffee, looked back down at my phone, and then, bang! Something slammed against my driver's side window so hard it made me jump. I turned so fast, I nearly spilled my coffee. Standing just outside the glass was a young woman. She looked like she was somewhere in her 20s, fair-skinned, shoulder-length brown hair that was completely out of place from running. She was wearing a dark charcoal hoodie with Seattle printed across the front in big white letters, light blue jeans with one knee ripped open, and a pair of white sneakers that were now covered in mud. Her hoodie had dirt smeared across one sleeve, and there was mud on one side of her face like she'd fallen hard. But the first thing I noticed wasn't her clothes. It was her eyes. She looked absolutely terrified, not nervous, not upset. Terrified. She slammed her hand against the window again. "Please." I cracked my window open just a couple of inches. Before I could even say anything, she blurted out, "Please, you've gotta help me. Let me in." "What happened? I'll tell you, okay? Just let me in." She kept looking over her shoulder toward the woods, every couple of seconds, like she expected somebody to come running out of them. "Is somebody after you?" I asked. "I don't know where he is." She was almost crying now. "He was right behind me. We have to go now. Please." I didn't unlock the door. "Not yet." "Ma'am, calm down." "I can't." Her voice cracked. "I can't calm down. He's gonna find me. Please." She took another step closer to the truck. "Look." She was breathing so hard she had to stop for a second. "Are you gonna help me or not?" For a moment, I didn't answer. Instead, I looked past her, first toward the road behind her. Nothing. Then the tree line. Still nothing. I checked both mirrors. No headlights, no movement, no sound except my engine idling. For all I knew, this could have been a setup. She could have been standing here to get me to unlock the truck while somebody else waited just out of sight. I'd seen enough in my life to know people had pulled worse scams than that, so I wasn't about to throw my guard down just because somebody looked scared. But at the same time, fear is a hard thing to fake. People can fake tears, they can fake a story, they can fake panic. What they usually can't fake are the little things. The way their breathing refuses to slow down. The way their eyes keep searching behind them without even realizing they're doing it. The way they stop making sense because their mind is moving faster than their mouth. She wasn't standing there trying to convince me. She looked like somebody who genuinely believed her life depended on getting inside my truck. I looked toward the woods one last time. Nothing. I looked back at her. All right. The second I said it, she was already at the passenger door. I hit the unlock button. She practically threw the door open, climbed inside, and slammed it shut behind her. The first thing she did wasn't look at me. She hit the lock. Then she turned around in her seat and looked back through the rear window. Still breathing hard. Still scanning the darkness behind us. I put the truck into drive. As we pulled back onto the highway, I glanced at her for a second. She still hadn't relaxed, not even a little. "So," I said quietly, keeping my eyes on the road, "start from the beginning. What happened?" She took a deep breath, but didn't say anything straight away. For a few seconds, she just stared through the windshield. I just got off work." "What do you do?" I asked. "I'm a store clerk." She let out a shaky breath. "There's a grocery store a few miles from here. I usually work the evening shift." "What time did you get off?" "A little after midnight." She rubbed her hands together, even though the heater was on. I locked up, clocked out, and started walking to my pickup point. "You always walk there?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's only a couple of minutes from the store. I'd only been living around there for a few months." She let out a nervous breath. "Everybody kept telling me it was a quiet area. I never thought something like this would happen." "It only takes one person," I said. She quietly nodded. "My name's Jeffrey, by the way." She looked over at me. "Samantha." "It's nice to meet you, Samantha. I wish it was under better circumstances." She gave a faint, exhausted smile before looking back out at the road. "So what happened after you left the store?" "There was this guy." She frowned. "I noticed him behind me after I'd been walking for maybe a minute." "You knew him?" She shook her head. "No, I'd never seen him before. At first I ignored him. I just figured we were walking the same way. But every time I looked back, he was still there. He never passed me. He just stayed behind me. Then he caught up." "What did he say?" "I don't even remember everything." She shook her head. "Just normal questions at first. Long shift? Heading home? You live around here?" I answered with one or two words. I didn't want to be rude. I just wanted him to leave, but he didn't. He kept walking beside me. The closer I got to my pickup point, the closer he got to me. She paused. He was way too close. I could actually hear him breathing. I didn't interrupt. He kept smiling. She looked down. Like we already knew each other. "What happened then?" I told him. "Look, can you please leave me alone?" She swallowed. He just laughed. "What did he say?" She looked straight ahead. "Come on, baby. I'm just trying to be friendly," she continued. I didn't answer. I just started walking faster. So did he. I crossed the street. He crossed too. I sped up again. He did the same. She shook her head. I could hear his footsteps getting closer. And then she stopped talking. "And then what?" I turned around. Her voice had become almost a whisper. He had his arms stretched out toward me. I don't know if he was trying to grab me. She looked at me, but that's exactly what it looked like. I panicked. I shoved him as hard as I could. He stumbled backwards, and I ran. "Did he chase you?" "Yeah." "What did he look like?" "I don't know. Late 30s, maybe. Dark jacket, baseball cap." I wasn't really looking at his clothes. I was trying to get away from him. "All right, keep going." I could hear him yelling behind me, but I don't even know what he was saying. I was too busy trying to save myself. I didn't even look back. I just kept running. Where? Into the woods. I wasn't thinking. I just wanted to lose him. I figured if I got far enough into the trees, maybe he'd stop. She looked out of the passenger window, but he didn't. I could still hear him. He kept crashing through the bushes behind me. I was trying to run as fast as I could, and then I fell. She looked down at the mud on her jeans. I hit the ground hard. I tried getting back up, but when I looked up, he was already coming toward me, fast. I thought. She stopped. I honestly thought that was it. The truck was silent for a couple of seconds. I grabbed the first thing I could reach. What was it? A rock. I didn't even think. I just threw it. "You hit him?" She nodded. "I think I hit him in the head." He yelled, grabbed his head, and fell to one knee. I didn't wait. I got up and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I just kept running until she finally looked over at me. "Until I found your truck." The truck fell quiet again. A minute passed before she spoke. "Do you smoke?" I glanced at her. "Yeah. Can I have one?" I know it's a terrible time to ask. I really need one. I reached into the center console and handed her the pack. She took one out, but her hand was trembling so badly she couldn't get the lighter to work. She tried again. Still nothing. I took the lighter from her. "Here." She held the cigarette between her lips while I lit it. She took a long drag and slowly breathed the smoke out. I reached for the passenger window switch. She immediately stopped me. "No." She glanced toward the darkness outside. "Please, leave it closed. I don't want to hear anything from outside." I nodded. "All right." I opened the ashtray. It was packed full. I chuckled. "Hold on. I've been meaning to empty this thing. I tipped the old cigarette butts into my empty coffee cup, slid the ashtray back into place, and said, "Here you go." "Thanks." She tapped the ash into it before taking another drag. Her hand was still shaking, not as badly as before, but enough for me to notice. After another minute or so, I looked over at her. "You know what?" She turned toward me. "I'm taking you to the sheriff's office. They'll get deputies out looking for this guy. You'll be safe there." She nodded almost immediately. "Okay. Thank you." For the rest of the drive, neither of us said much. Every now and then she'd take another drag from the cigarette, and then she'd glance into the passenger side mirror, but she never once stopped looking behind us. A few minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of the sheriff's office and put the truck in park. "We're here." She looked through the windshield at the building. It was a small sheriff's office. A couple of patrol units were parked outside, and the front entrance was still lit. She didn't move. I looked over at her. "You okay?" She kept staring ahead. She took a shaky breath. "I can't." "What do you mean?" She shook her head. "I can't walk in there right now." "Can you go in first?" She nodded. "Please. Just tell them I'm out here. I'll come in. I need a minute." She looked completely drained. I nodded. "All right. I won't be long." I stepped out of the truck, shut the door behind me, and walked inside. The lobby was quiet. A television mounted high in one corner was playing the local news with the sound turned almost all the way down. Behind the front counter sat the overnight deputy. He looked up as I walked in. "Evening. Hey, what can I do for you?" "I've got a young woman outside. She's pretty shaken up. She says a man was following her." I paused, maybe trying to kill her. The deputy's expression changed. He instinctively looked over my shoulder toward the front doors. "Where is she?" "She's still outside. In my truck. She wouldn't come in." Before he could respond, a voice echoed from behind the secure door. "Deputy Collins, can you come back here for a second?" Collins looked toward the hallway. "Hang on just a minute." He disappeared through the secure door, leaving me standing alone in the lobby. I don't know how long I waited. Maybe a couple of minutes. Then the secure door opened again. I looked up. A young woman walked out between two deputies. The first thing I saw was her face. Same brown hair, same terrified eyes. I froze. "No." I blinked, then looked again. It was her. Samantha. Her hands were cuffed in front of her. Then my eyes dropped to the charcoal hoodie. Seattle. Big white letters across the front. The ripped jeans. The mud on her sleeve. The same patch of mud on the side of her face. Every single detail matched. What the hell? I honestly don't know if I said it out loud or just thought it. Nothing about it made sense. Before I even realized what I was doing, I was already running toward my truck. The passenger seat was empty. I looked around the parking lot. Nothing. No one. I opened the passenger door. The seat was clean. I looked down at the floor mat. No muddy footprints. Nothing. I just stood there for a second, trying to think. Then it hit me. The cigarette. For a brief second, I thought maybe she'd thrown it out the window. Then I remembered. No. She'd asked me to keep the window closed. I'd handed her the ashtray. I reached into the center console and opened it. One cigarette butt, just one. I stared at it. That was hers. For the first time since I'd seen her inside that building, I actually felt a strange sense of relief. I wasn't imagining any of this. She had been in my truck. That cigarette proved it, but almost as quickly as that thought came, another one replaced it. How the hell was I ever going to explain this to anybody? And, more importantly, to myself. I slowly closed the ashtray, shut the passenger door, and started walking back toward the sheriff's office. My legs felt heavy. My mind wouldn't stop racing. As I reached the entrance, the front door opened. 2 deputies were escorting Samantha outside. We crossed paths. She turned her head, looked straight at me, and the corner of her mouth lifted into the faintest smile. Not a friendly smile, not a relieved one. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach drop. It was almost like she knew exactly what was going through my head. She never said a word. The deputies kept walking as if nothing had happened. I stood there for another second before walking back inside. An older man in a sheriff's uniform noticed me immediately. "You all right, son?" I must have looked awful. He guided me over to a chair. Someone handed me a paper cup of water. I took a couple of slow sips before finally looking back up. "By the way, who was that girl?" The sheriff looked at me for a moment. "Why do you ask?" I hesitated. "No reason. She didn't really look like a criminal." The sheriff let out a short, dry laugh. "Yeah, you'd be surprised how often people say that." He leaned back slightly. "She's here on a murder charge. We believe she stabbed a man multiple times earlier tonight." I didn't say anything. I just stared into the cup in my hands. A few seconds passed, then I quietly asked, "How long has she been here?" The sheriff answered without even thinking, "A little over 3 hours." Everything inside me went completely still. A moment later, Deputy Collins came back out. He looked over at me. "Oh, sir. Sorry about that. So, what happened to that young woman you were telling me about?" I looked at him. My mind was somewhere else. 5 or 6 seconds passed before I answered. My voice barely sounded like my own. "I think she left." He frowned. "Left?" A brief pause. "Sir?" I slowly nodded. "Yeah, I went back outside. But she wasn't there." Another pause. "I think maybe she got scared." Neither of them said another word. Honestly, neither did I. I left the sheriff's office that night, but I wasn't the same man who had walked into it. When I pulled into that parking lot, I still believed the world made sense. People lied. People made mistakes. Sometimes they misunderstood things, but eventually, there was always an explanation. As I walked back to my truck that night, I honestly didn't know what to believe anymore. I unlocked the driver's door, climbed inside, and just sat there. For a long moment, I couldn't even bring myself to start the engine. My eyes slowly drifted toward the passenger seat. It was empty. 20 minutes earlier, Samantha had been sitting there, talking to me, smoking a cigarette, looking over her shoulder every few seconds like someone was right behind us. Now, there wasn't a single sign she'd ever been there. Without really thinking about it, I opened the ashtray one more time. That one cigarette butt was still sitting there. I stared at it for several seconds. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Another part of me couldn't. It was the only thing I had that proved I hadn't imagined the whole thing. I closed the ashtray, started the truck, and slowly pulled out of the parking lot. Normally, it would have taken me around 35 or 40 minutes to get home from there. That night, it felt like the longest drive of my life. I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't play any music. The truck was completely silent. Every few minutes, I'd catch myself glancing over at the passenger seat again. It was empty every single time, but somehow, that didn't stop me from checking again a few minutes later. The roads were almost deserted. The woods on both sides looked darker than I remembered. Every shadow caught my attention. Every pair of headlights in the distance made me grip the steering wheel just a little tighter. The more I thought about Samantha, the less any of it made sense. It was almost like I'd met two completely different people that night. There was the Samantha sitting beside me in my truck, terrified, shaking, barely able to hold a cigarette without her hands trembling. She looked like someone who couldn't hurt a fly. Then there was the exact same woman I saw at the sheriff's office, the woman who, according to the sheriff, had stabbed a man multiple times earlier that night. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Had I really spent those 20 minutes in my car casually talking to a murderer? Then my mind would jump straight back to the sheriff's office, seeing her walk out between those deputies, the handcuffs, that smile. I must have replayed those few seconds 100 times during that drive. No matter how many times I went over them, they never made any more sense. I thought about calling someone, maybe one of my old buddies from the Marines, maybe even my dad, just to hear another person's voice. But what was I supposed to tell them? Dad, I just gave a ride to a woman who'd apparently already been sitting inside the sheriff's office for 3 hours. Nobody would have believed me. Truth be told, I wasn't even sure I believed it myself. Then I found myself thinking about something my dad had said before I left his place. "You sure you don't want to stay the night?" I'd smiled, told him I'd be fine. When I pulled away from his house that night, it felt like every other drive home. I was already thinking about getting home, taking a shower, and getting some sleep. If someone had told me that the next hour of my life would completely change the way I looked at the world, I would have laughed. Looking back, sometimes I wish I'd listened to him. Maybe if I'd stayed. Maybe if I'd left an hour later. Maybe if I'd taken another road. I know it probably wouldn't have changed anything. But after a night like that, your mind starts searching for anything that could have changed the outcome. About 40 minutes later, I finally pulled into my driveway. It was a little after 3 in the morning. I shut the engine off and just sat there. The house was right in front of me. All I had to do was get out and walk inside. Instead, I stayed in that truck for another 10 minutes. My hands rested on the steering wheel. I wasn't even thinking anymore. I was just sitting there, trying to accept that everything I'd experienced over the last couple of hours had actually happened. Eventually, I forced myself inside. I don't remember turning the lights on. I don't remember grabbing anything to eat. The only thing I really remember is lying awake in bed. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Samantha walking between those deputies. Then I'd see her sitting beside me in my truck again. And then that smile. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop seeing it. A lot of time has passed since that night. Life eventually settled back into something that looked normal. I went back to work, got back into my routine. People eventually stopped asking why I'd looked so exhausted for weeks afterward. But that night never really left me. I did tell bits and pieces of the story to a few people I trusted, a couple of close friends, one of the guys I served with in the Marines. Nobody laughed at me. At least not to my face. Most of them tried to make sense of it. Some said I was exhausted. Some thought the stress had finally caught up with me. A few even said I'd probably imagined the whole thing. Honestly, there were times when I almost believed they were right. Then I'd remember the cigarette. I still have it. That cigarette butt is still sitting inside the same little metal ashtray I took out of my truck all those years ago. I never threw it away. Not because there is anything special about it or I am obsessed with it in some way, and also not because I think it proves anything to anybody else. I kept it for one reason. Every now and then, when I catch myself wondering if I somehow imagined that entire night, I look at it, and I remember. I know someone sat beside me in that truck. I know someone smoked that cigarette. And I know I drove someone to that sheriff's office. At first, I couldn't stop thinking about Samantha's story. The man she said was chasing her, what really happened out there in those woods, whether any of it had actually happened the way she described it. But as the years went by, those questions slowly faded away, because none of them answered the one thing that never made sense. If Samantha had already been sitting inside that sheriff's office for more than 3 hours, then who spent those 20 minutes sitting beside me? How can one person be in 2 different places at the same time? And then there was that smile out of everything that happened that night. That's the part I still see the most. I still don't know why she smiled, and I honestly don't think I ever will. If you're listening to my story and you think you have a logical explanation, I'd genuinely like to hear it, because I don't think there is any.